getting in online, it's going to give them tons of exposure. It's the easiest way to get brand awareness, and you can sell a lot. But the truth is, you belong with your core customer, right? You need to build that awareness at retail.
Yes.
And in the natural and specialty food stores, in the supermarkets with the small store within the store, where they're really setting up a designated set for these items, the experience is still there, and it grows and supports your brand. And you lose that at e-commerce. We haven't figured out a way competitors by highlighting the brand advantage from a micro and macro perspective. Mm-hmm. So what are you doing differently in regards to quality, flavor, scent, packaging? Who created this line? Is it diverse owned? What is your meet the maker story? Yes. Have you packaged that up into a comprehensive format that will resonate with a buyer and or not even a buyer, but a consumer?
Yes.
You need those two audiences and need to be able to really have that information set up so that you can prepare the pitch for that.
Hi everyone, good morning. Welcome to the new episode of Live Sattviko Talks. Today we have with us Elizabeth from KeHE Distributors. Hi Elizabeth, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Very pleased to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. Glad you have joined our session today. Awesome. Viewers, we have with us Elizabeth from the KeHE Distributors today with us on this on the show. She's an accomplished sales leader and in CPG as a senior account manager at KeHE Distributors. She leads an account team and ensures overall profitability and increase in sales by developing creative promotional plans, managing profitable execution, and finding new business opportunities. She is passionate about the natural products industry and committed to communicating the value of choosing natural, organic, and better for you foods on behalf of the environment, health, and achieving optimum wellness. Prior to joining KeHE, Elizabeth was a national and regional sales director for several nutritional product companies and held a record of generating new channels of business and increasing distribution in the key accounts. She earned a business administration degree from Temple Fox School of Business and holds certificates in finance from the Harvard Business School, professional food buying and plant-based nutrition from the Cornell University. She is passionately curious and loves spending her free time reading across a host of topics and creating functional nutritional products from the kitchen. She is a plant-based athlete and enjoys running, cycling, yoga, and hiking with her dog Ava in Pennsylvania on the weekends. So very impressive profile, Elizabeth. Really, thank you so much for coming on this show.
Very pleased to be here and to speak with you today. It's a very exciting time for the industry, and there's a lot to discuss in terms of strategy and where we stand and the state of natural and specialty foods.
Awesome, awesome. So, of course, I mean, you have been working with KeHE Distributors for a long time now. So if you can take our viewers through your journey with KeHE Distributors, and I mean, how are you contributing towards the overall CPG industry as a whole?
Absolutely. So KeHE is an amazing organization. It's made up of about 5,500 employees. It's employee owned. And it's a 16 distribution center network across North America. KeHE is one of the largest and most respected pure play grocery and natural distributors in the nation. We really take care of the brands that we work with. So we combine consumer insights with market data and a curated item assortment and product knowledge to offer merchandising expertise to our retailer customers. Mm-hmm. We deliver actionable data-backed solutions.
Sure.
And we keep our insights relevant to the current customer that we're working for and trying to gain distribution in for different brands. It's also a certified B Corp. We are held to the highest standards of social and environmental performance, And through this accountability and our public transparency, we can have a positive impact on the planet and the communities we touch. I'm personally attached to this. I'm part of the Sustainability Committee and the Care Trade Committee, which is supportive of mission-based brands and being fully transparent and working on the sustainable solutions within the company and in how we partner with suppliers in everyday work that we do. It's employee-owned, founded in 1952 by Art KeHE, an independent retailer who saw a need in the market to better service store owners. That was the origin behind KeHE. So I began with them as a regional promotional manager in the Northeast.
Okay.
And the function of that role is actually really neat. It's about securing promotions and deals for specific retailers, different channels, to work on targeting velocity concerns, to get deals for certain promotions, to stimulate sales or kind of pinpoint or target different areas where a brand needs to strengthen. And so my beginning phase of KeHE was all related to promotional management, working with different retailers and brands directly. I then moved into a senior account manager role at Acme Markets, which is I was focused on a division of Albertsons,
right,
and was in charge of managing that business just the way I am Kings and Balducci's, leading a team to achieve growth targets and profitability for a large set of stores in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic as well.
Awesome.
Acme Markets acquired Kings and Balducci's, so there was an opportunity there for me to move to Kings and Balducci's and be part of that integration.
Right.
So that's where I am right now. I'm at Kings and Balducci's, managing the business on behalf of KeHE.
Okay.
And it's a really neat position. As you described, it involves managing sort of the profitability, but then also coming up with really creative solutions to get our products that we distribute to sell better, which is a unique challenge right now.
Absolutely.
We have a lot of different factors in the industry at play, and they contrast tremendously. We have some consumers that at the end of the day, most consumers are stressed, right? And they're looking for wellness initiatives and value.
Right.
And so it's about helping the retailer communicate that effectively through deals, merchandising, promotion, et cetera, so they can manage sort of the need states of the current customer.
True.
At the same time, we are tasked with meeting profits from prior year, which, as everybody knows, last year was one of the most profitable years in the industry, as a result of everyone living and working from home.
Yeah.
Because they bought tons of food and supplies and materials, and we're living out of their houses and utilizing all of these products more than they ever have.
Right.
And so it's a really interesting contrast this year, because we are trying to meet and exceed those targets and goals from the prior year, which are exceptional. Yes. But at the same time, we're faced with the reality of where our consumers stand and where the nation is at large, which is in a difficult position. Finances are strapped. People are looking for deals. They're looking to their local supermarkets and stores to provide comfort, wellness, relief. And so it's about being really strategic. And guiding brands to carefully manage the way they go to market and sell during this time, so that they're, keeping their current customers, gaining new ones, and not making decisions that are going to break the bank and put them in a compromised situation as a result of where the economy stands.
Yes, do that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So of course, I mean, you have been with the organization for quite some time now, and I completely understand that in a traditional brick and mortar world, the principal variables that impacted the choice of growth strategy were controlled versus cost or risk, right? So of course, I mean, e-commerce, however, has made that choice inherently more complicated. So, I mean, what is your take on that?
So the cost is high overall, and it's a careful and strategic management of both channels from a supply, demand, and cost of doing business viewpoint.
Sure.
And it's more complex today than ever, in that you want to coordinate a strategy that has both the e-commerce effort and the brick and mortar effort complementing each other.
True.
In the best of all worlds, you're really looking at BOPIS as being a great method of merging the two. Buy online, pick up in store, for those that are not familiar. But the reason why is because you lose the power of the experience on the e-commerce platform. We haven't gotten there yet. There's no scratch and sniff. There's the virtual demos are weak. You can't try it. You can't press on a button, have someone pop out and chat with you about the product. And so it's a very flat experience.
Yes, I agree.
And what you want to do is acknowledge that as a specialty retailer, and complement what you're offering as that flat experience in store with an experience.
Sure.
And then allow the consumer to take advantage of convenience and fast, sort of shipping or whatever the case may be that they're looking for through the buy online, pick up in store. Right. So it's kind of a way to merge the two worlds, but they're very different, right? And you have to figure out from a strategic perspective, what is your priority? A lot of natural and specialty brands make the mistake of thinking that, getting in online, it's going to give them tons of exposure. It's the easiest way to get brand awareness, and you can sell a lot. But the truth is, you belong with your core customer, right? You need to build that awareness at retail.
Yes.
And in the natural and specialty food stores, in the supermarkets with the small store within the store, where they're really setting up a designated set for these items, the experience is still there, and it grows and supports your brand. And you lose that at e-commerce. We haven't figured out a way to translate that yet.
That's right.
So when you're designing your strategy, it's important to think about your product portfolio offering. Is it matching both online and at brick and mortar? Are your trade spend allocations effective? Are you able to drive trial of the product via virtual demo versus in-store sampling? There's a necessity to capture a new customer differently online than you would via brick and mortar interaction.
Sure.
So the spend is inherently larger with ad marketing, and it's also highly visual, right?
Yes. Of course.
And it's important to keep that in mind. You need to think about all these factors before you make the choice about where you want to go.
You're right. And
I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah, and now of course people, now the stores have opened pretty much, and people are now experiencing that shopping experience again, right? People love shopping, walking down the aisle, and they really like it. So of course, at the end of the day, that is the best experience a shopper can really have, right?
Yep, exactly. And then, you know, you have to figure out how to adapt that experience that they're having in store to their online, you know, interaction with your brand. And there are ways to do that. You have more control if it's direct to consumer and it's coming from your website.
Right.
You lose that control if you go e-commerce via some of the other major players.
Right.
And so you just have to think about all of that from a strategic perspective, like what is of value to you?
True.
And your play in these different spaces largely depends on the size of your brand. Like you don't want to go into those big spaces if you are not at a certain growth stage,
right,
and have that core customer base, because you won't grow at the same rate as if you spend time and money developing that core first.
True, of course.
So, yeah.
So of course, I mean, brand old retail growth provides the benefit of full control of both the sale and the customer experience, as well as the internalization of, let's say, margins normally absorbed by the intermediaries. However, I mean, we completely understand that there is a cost associated with the development of digital experience also, which is absorbed by the brand. So, I mean, what tips would you like to give to the growing brands and the entrepreneurs who wish to enter this space now?
Yeah. So slow down, right? Do your work and due diligence in advance about what it costs and what, you know, what realistically is involved in this pay to play game, because that's what it is. You're, especially as you move into certain channels. Unfortunately, there's a finite amount of money that you have to have to be involved. And so laying that out in advance is crucial. But what I'm fascinated by is a lot of brands even come to us and are not prepared with the information that is going to be compelling or resonate with the retailer. Right. I see this every day. So
that's a valid point. Yeah.
What you want to do is differentiate yourself from competitors by highlighting the brand advantage from a micro and macro perspective. Mm-hmm. So what are you doing differently in regards to quality, flavor, scent, packaging? You know, who created this line? Is it diverse owned? What is your meet the maker story? Yes. Have you packaged that up into a comprehensive format that will resonate with a buyer and or not even a buyer, but a consumer? Yes. You need those two audiences and need to be able to really have that information set up so that you can prepare the pitch for that designated retailer. The other thing is, not only do you want to slow down and be prepared, simple advice, but so important, because it's just amazing how many people have not done the work. They don't know who they compete against. Yes. You know, they don't know what makes them, they don't know their brand advantage. You know, they can't really tell their story effectively. And they just pass it off to brokers that don't do it justice and really don't give it the attention it deserves to differentiate the line. The other thing is, be prepared to negotiate, right? Of course. Negotiation is one of the most important things that people forget all the time. Like, there are these standards and there are ideals that different retailers have about what's required to get in. But if you come prepared with that compelling brand story and you have the differentiation all laid out with the competitive advantages highlighted, go ahead and negotiate and say, this is why we're different. This is the customer we're going to bring. This is the market share we provide. And if you have that laid out, you're really going to have a compelling advantage over other brands and potentially have lower costs doing business.
Right. And that's a really important point for the growing brand as well, right? Because I mean, we completely understand that the cost of failing in the US is extremely high, right? So of course, I mean, it has to be, I mean, the steps which we which we as a brand should take, should be extremely cautious. And
and it's also about understanding where to spend, right? So
yes,
there's
true.
a couple of different avenues, and they're not all the same for each retailer, each channel. So
Right.
I can't insist upon this enough, but doing your homework before you go in, it's
True.
not just about opening doors and getting access. That can sabotage a brand. And again, simple advice, but you'd be surprised how many people just focus on that, and that's the method. You really need to understand what each retailer is asking for.
Yes.
And then depending on your cost of your product, your cost of goods, the margin, designating that additional trade spend effectively. So
yes,
are you willing to pay slotting and new placement allowance? You should be. That's pretty much a standard that's hard to negotiate and cut and dry. The promotions and the ads, make sure that those ads are really working for the retailer.
yes,
Before you throw $750, $3,000, $8,000, whatever the case may be, into that ad, make sure it resonates. Otherwise, negotiate there and say, instead of doing an ad, I'd like to add 4 promotions and deepen the deal. And that will offset the ad cost, but increase their velocity on our products.
yes.
Those are the kind of conversations you need to have on a channel by channel basis with each retailer. If you don't, you lose out. And in the beginning stages of growth for smaller brands, it's vital to have somebody who understands that and can break it down almost on sort of analytical level. Is this worth entering now? And where should we put our trade spend dollars so that it's an effective launch within this retailer?
Right. So, Elizabeth, you have made an important point here regarding the velocity of sales from the retail shelf. So, if you can maybe throw some more light around it, that how important is it to achieve that basic sales velocity so that it keeps both the retailer as well as the distributor happy, and then only they can look forward to the next level.
It is very important. It's probably one of the leading metrics that is used to determine whether a product remains on shelf.
Sure.
Data is king internally, right? And so we have access to data, SPINS, IRI. It's telling us what these products are doing in grocery, food, mass merchandise, drug, dollar, etc. Retailers have more access to this information than ever.
Sure.
And so within a minute's notice, they're able to put you in your category and overview the health of the category by segment, brand, and item, and see where you stand, right?
Yes, yes.
And so that is a really important thing to understand, whether you're small or large.
Yes.
The minute you start on shelf somewhere, you got to work those first 6 months to make sure that product is turning.
Right.
All the focus should be on velocity.
Right.
And you know that I see a lot of brands make that mistake in the beginning. They focus on other things, they try to get involved, and they lose sight of that start date. And then 3-4 months go by and they get an email from the buyer saying, hey, like your product's sitting.
Yeah.
You have
which is very unfortunate.
or it's gone. And you know, again, in terms of preparation and forework and all of that you're doing, it's important to have paved the way and have a customer before you get in there. Right. So that people know the product is there and you've done the work to drive traffic to that retailer.
True.
Some of the things that you guys are doing as a brand with your lifestyle solutions is a huge part of that, right? So all of the things you do outside to encourage consumers to adopt healthier, you know, lifestyle solutions in line with yoga, etc.
Right.
That kind of stuff is resonates powerfully with retailers, because if you tie it to the brand and then coordinate it to a destination, you're then driving new consumers to that retailer, which in turn increases velocity.
Yes.
but it's simple, but it requires incredible planning. And a lot of brands forget that first phase, right? And then you're like, oh, you know, if you had set yourself up a little bit better, given that launch date, you would have been in a much better position.
True.
So as far as velocity too, like within a retailer, they constantly get ranking reports highlighting the growth of each item, benchmark against the market. Like that's commonplace now. It didn't used to be. And even the smaller retailers have access to this information via their distributor partners or their brokers. So they may not be able to afford it themselves, but because of the services that they subscribe to, like within KeHE, for example, we provide our retailer partners with data, tons of data, so they can make strategic decisions about you know, which brands to put on an end, you know, which brands are doing really well for them that they should consider adding additional items for, which is what we call vertical growth. There are a lot of suggestions that come into play, but that is due to this infusion of data. That is another huge part of CPG in general, and is one of the biggest cost factors for small brands to experience. The access to data and are working with retailers who have access to that data is crucial to their growth strategy in the beginning.
Yes. And of course, I mean, you have made a very valid point here that it is very important to analyze that data and take actions, take subsequent actions based on that. Because if you are not really taking actions on that, then end of the day, you will not achieve that velocity and you're out. And
exactly.
Fortunate, right?
Yeah, and it's not only, so you plan, you launch, but what is your strategy for on shelf, right? So traffic building, you know, high volume share, frequently purchased items, high percentage of sales. What are you doing within the space? And then transaction building, like, is it an impulse purchase? You know, is it an everyday purchase? You need to kind of think about how your product is increasing the size of average category transaction for a retailer. So all of these things come into play. And then of course, you know, profit, cash, all of that consideration. At the end of the day though, excitement. What buzz are you creating with your brand in a retailer? I mean, think about some of the greats within, you know, Whole Foods or Kroger or Albertsons. Like, what is it? An impulse? Is it a lifestyle solution-oriented seasonal item? You know, that kind of strategy creates an urgency and sort of a limited time opportunity that the customer is sensitive to and gets excited about. And that in turn increases the velocity as well.
Right. Awesome. So Elizabeth, coming down to my next question, of course, I mean, with the demise of multi-brand retailers, we have seen that single brand retailers are being further challenged to move from conceptualizing themselves as retailers to thinking of themselves as brands which are available at multiple points of sale rather than stores. So, I mean, what is your take on that?
Yeah, so this is tricky. Again, has to be carefully managed because you don't want your brand to become saturated in the wrong channels. Right? And depending on your cost of goods and margin, you can get positioned in different areas online where you start to really have to regulate pricing, and it gets a little crazy because you have different price points across different channels. It becomes unclear to the customer where the best value is. It's confusing. It's not orderly. And then they kind of lose sight of where you are or where they can get you and where you belong as a brand. So, you know, I really think the single brand retailers, you know, there's an advantage there in that it's an organized viewpoint for the customer. right? But at the end of the day, it's limited exposure. So those additional points of distribution need to be seen as opportunity for exposure and managed accordingly.
Right.
But what's lost is that customization. You don't want the brand message, price, to be diluted or confused.
Yes.
And that's what happens with multi-point.
And I think this is also relevant for, if we look at, let's say, the categories as well, right? I mean, if there is a category which demands that there has to be multiple brands in the same category, then of course the retailer will have it, right?
Yes. Yep.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I want to make sure I'm understanding the question appropriately. So the multi-brands within a category at a retailer on shelf, as opposed to a single brand with a retailer on
that's
shelf.
Right. That's right.
Yeah. So again, it's about understanding for each retailer what is going to resonate most with their customer base. It's like the idea of like when you're launching a brand and you have 6 products, you don't go to the door and say, we want all 6 in. No.
Of course.
You go and say, these 3 are going to work best for you. It's the same proposition with multi or multiple brands within a retailer. Hopefully it's within a family that plays, and that there's compatibility with. So, you know, if it's cross categories, but within the same theme, you can upsell, you can cross merchandise, and have some fun with that within the store.
Yes.
If it's not, it gets a little trickier. In my mind, I always kind of try to see them as separate brands, even though they're one brand with multiple segments within a store. It serves you better from a planning purpose, from seeing it as its own growth opportunity, than looking at the brand at large.
Sure. Awesome. Coming down to my next question, of course, this is a bit, it's a personal question. So if I were to ask you your 2, maybe short-term goals or long-term goals, so what would they be?
These are good questions. So I want to continue. I mean, I am wildly passionate about the natural product industry.
Yes.
I care deeply about sort of exposing the value and benefit of natural, organic, and specialty foods. So my goal is to become a larger voice in this space.
Sure.
Hopefully, you know, with KeHE, in different capacities, working with different retailers. Also just getting more involved in the space, maybe on the consulting side. Would really like to work internationally, as we spoke about a little bit. You know, the world is one big market, and it's exciting when we pull together and kind of exchange resources and opportunities.
Right.
And more so than ever, that's possible, and the consumer is eager for it.
Sure.
They're looking for all sorts of products and have access to it. So let's be creative and bring some of those products offline into brick and mortar and allow for them to experience, you know, sort of international cuisine, you know, locally. Right. That's part of the goal. But so shorter and longer term is just continuing to be part of this movement in the business world, really conveying that these items have a designated, purposeful place on shelf.
Sure.
They are making an impact in terms of the bottom line, and they're also changing health and wellness for consumers at home.
True.
Like I said before, at least in the States, people are craving wellness initiatives.
Yes.
So both e-commerce and brick and mortar have an opportunity to really hone in on that and offer products and solutions that meet that consumer need.
Right. Right.
On the side, I am, personally excited about plant-based nutrition and hope to become some kind of plant-based nutrition health coach in my free time when that happens, not sure. But, integrating all three aspects, executive in the business world for consumer packaged goods, consulting, really working with, international brands and diverse owned. I care deeply about that, mission-based. And then nutrition and wellness and kind of making all of those play together to, at the end of the day, make an impact in my local community and, connect with as many people who are trying to do the same thing.
Lovely. Awesome.
Yeah.
So coming down to my next question, of course, now talking about KeHE. So what kind of distribution channel does KeHE work in? I mean, is it direct B2C, indirect B2B, intensive, let's say selling mass marketed products or daily use products, selective outlets, or exclusivity in terms of sold distribution offered by the brand? So how does KeHE operates?
KeHE provides services in several distribution channels. So our largest channel is through traditional distribution. So distributing products from our manufacturers to our grocery chain and independent and retailer partners. Mm-hmm. So utilizing that 16 distribution center network.
Sure.
KeHE additionally services business to business e-commerce selling and third-party logistic fulfillment, and distributes to alternative channels, which include international and exports, food service, military, convenience stores, and hardware stores.
Okay.
So there's quite a lot that we do.
Yeah.
Again, it's so much more than just distribution, as I mentioned before. It is combined with consumer insights, market data, curated item assortment, and product knowledge coming from experts that work at KeHE. And then we also offer merchandising expertise in several of those channels with direct rep forces and then account management teams in our different retailers across the country. Okay, awesome. So of course, I mean, you personally are also into plant-based nutrition diet, and of course, KeHE also supplies a lot of products in this specialty segment. So based on your experience with KeHE and of course your experience in into FMCG and CPG background, so which all chains or areas do you feel that it has a great potential for the plant-based food? So rephrase that last part of the question, sorry.
Sure. So of course, I mean, based on your experience with various retailers and of course the KeHE distribution, so which all retailers or areas do you really feel that these areas or these retailers have a huge scope in the plant-based food network?
Got it. So 5-6 years ago, I would have given you a specific list of retailers saying these are the ones that are on it and are owning the plant-based space. Right now, we've seen a huge shift, and I'm not sure whether that's related to data analysis as per this last year. Retailers across the country have been able to use COVID to understand what consumers are interested in, right? Because they saw via SPINS data and IRI what was being purchased and brought to their home through the internet. There's a lot of conversation around that, and so as a result, some of the there has been a push and a change in virtually all brick and mortar retailers to incorporate some segment of plant-based and or make a focus on it. What seems to be the differentiator is how they're managing the category. So, we have some retailers that have decided to grow their private label brands with plant-based as the focus. In fact, they're coming out with whole segments of private label plant-based and trying to capitalize and sort of target consumers on that level. We then have retailers, and I mean, from small mom and pops to the large chains, to convenience, looking at, you know, creating designated sets for plant-based, just like we've seen in stores with gluten-free, right?
Right.
You know, where can you go? And there's plant-based options. They're become their own set and destination.
Sure.
Across the board, retailers are understanding that plant-based is an option. It's a lifestyle solution, and it needs to be included within every category. So, you know, when you're looking at soups, look at the picture behind me, right? When we're looking at pasta, when we're looking at, you know, cereal,
Yeah.
Are there options without dairy, without eggs, that are completely plant-based in that set? Those are the questions that are being asked. And if they're not meeting that need in one set, most retailers are aiming to add those items. So I think it varies. Some are much more aggressive than others. And their approach is very different from a merchandising perspective, and then from how focused they are on it. But the overarching theme is everyone understands the growth. It's huge. And there's tremendous potential. And that's why we see so many investors and funding going towards this space, because it's catching on. That's not to say that people are jumping on the vegan bandwagon, not at all. As a vegan, I can proudly say that, you know, I refrain from eating all animal products, but I'm very, where there's a very small amount of us in the world.
I'm sure.
What is more sort of coming to be is this understanding that there are better for you plant-based options available within each category that people are enjoying, right? So whether it be because of a sustainability concern, whether it be because of a dietary restriction of a particular food group, or it is because they're trying to achieve some sort of wellness goal. Consumers are leaning in to plant-based, and they're adopting and incorporating plant-based foods into their diets as a mainstay. So, you know, it's, you know, plant curious or flexitarian, as they say. So really integrating more of these foods into their traditional diets, which is wonderful.
Yes. And I'm sure this has, of course, a huge potential. And that's the reason, I mean, as you rightly mentioned, that a lot of brands are growing in this space and at the same time getting funded and looking at a bigger opportunity.
Yes, absolutely. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. I really feel as though we, as an industry and retailers at large, benefited tremendously from watching consumers this past year, right? And what you've seen is the retailers who are doing some of the most interesting things use this past year and shopping behavior to now develop their strategy going forward. And a lot of that is related to how much plant-based is coming into the scene as sort of a diet that is being adopted and integrated into traditional diets, as mentioned before.
Okay. So Elizabeth, based on this response, do you also think that, let's say, can plant-based snacks also somehow gain certain market share from the existing, let's say, traditional snacks which are available in the US?
Yes, I do. I think it's taking time. And it will continue to take time because, like anything, when a retailer introduces a new product, the strength of it is the awareness of the product by the consumer. And
Sure.
often these smaller brands don't have the funds to compete with the larger brands.
Yes.
And so they don't have the best positioning. They don't necessarily have the best support. And as we spoke about earlier, their launch strategy is complicated. So at retail, they're not being set up to be
Right.
successful.
Right.
It's not a fair world where like a consumer is walking through a show
Mhm.
and have the ability to try a bunch of products and just say, yes, that's the one I like because it tastes good, it makes me feel great, and it has great nutritional profile. It's not like that in a supermarket. You go
Yes.
in, you know, you have 6 facings of your big brand and then 1 small facing of that better for you product. It's going to take time for that customer to try it. But when they do, and they love it, they continue to buy it and they see the value of it. And what's really interesting is that as an industry and as brands and retailers, we're putting a lot of pressure on the consumer to find these items, right? We're not necessarily doing them a service. And if they were, at the end of the day, to have the chance to try them, like I said, in a show format, one versus the other, they probably would try and enjoy the better for you product.
Yes,
these are
I'm sure.
extremely tasty, highly nutritionally dense engineered products. I mean, that's the other exciting thing about this time. These foods are really, truly better for you. And so once consumers see it, find it, identify that they actually like this chip much better than the one that they've been buying for years.
Yes.
They're willing to pay a little bit more because it makes them feel better, or it's addressing an issue that they have personally, or there might be several reasons. The packaging is more sustainable and they're excited about that. Whatever the case may be, it's that discovery process.
Yes.
Which is the only sort of negative factor in getting consumers to jump on the bandwagon and adopting plant-based snacks sooner. Right. Because it's hard to do, you know, it's hard to get the word out sometimes in some of these bigger in stores and big box retailers about these products, but it's happening. You see it.
It is happening, I'm sure.
Yeah, and there's a really nice progression and more. I mean, there's a reason why you walk into mass merchandise and you see these huge bulk boxes of kale. Like, that's wonderful. Like, there's an interest and there's a need for it. And so it's the beginning and progression of that movement.
I'm sure. And I'm sure, I mean, based on this, of course, the retailers are also, I mean, the retail buyers are also taking a consciousness effort in understanding that such plant-based or maybe any other wellness product should have better facings at a supermarket, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And, you know, again, back to the question about data and, you know, how we look at that to determine opportunities. That's been vital to the success of specialty products and plant-based at large, because they're still, to a degree, for the most part, I mean, there are exceptional circumstances and we're grateful to the retailers that truly do support these brands. But for the most part, it can be really challenging to have a strong launch position. And so it's important to look at that alongside the data and be able to tell that story as you're growing market share. You know, we did okay at this retailer, but please note that the reason why we didn't do exceptionally is because we were on the bottom shelf with 1 facing next to 16 of such and such. So, you know, it's about also really making sure that the communication around that story and how you have launched and go to market is told in a compelling fashion, so you're still not devaluing the brand.
Yes, that's a critical point, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Elizabeth, coming down to my last question, of course. So I mean, how does the use of big data help KeHE to better control its stock and prepare the supply chain so that they can cope up with the peaks in demand without leaving empty shelves at less opportune times?
So we are on a mission to be the next generation distributor.
Sure.
And I'm proud to be part of this team that is making that effort. KeHE believes in powering its solutions using data-driven decisions, and backs it up with its implemented technology. From a supply chain standpoint, KeHE is partnered with Manhattan Associates, a supplier of supply chain software, to enhance its demand forecasting and inventory optimization solutions to better serve KeHE's customers.
Sure.
Through this new technology, KeHE improved by 5% in inventory reduction and 5% in reduction of spoilage. Huge gain.
How is it?
KeHE also provides its supplier partners with transparency and empowers them to make data-driven decisions around their distribution through the company's proprietary use of KeHE Connect BI. This gives suppliers a view into their business with KeHE through reporting and data visualization. It's what I was talking about earlier in how we interact and work with our retailer partners and suppliers. The conversations are always conducted with the usage of data. So we're really considering their brand on a very personalized level, but trying to offer insight and suggestions about where they stand within the category, within the region. And again, that comes down to a careful analysis of the data that we provide and sort of an ongoing check-in about how that is progressing or growing in those particular areas. So we offer tons of solutions, which is huge. It's part of doing business with KeHE. And it comes both with the actual reporting itself and then somebody either on the category management side, account management side, at the retail level, who's really going to give you insight about what the product's doing as it relates to the reporting that you're seeing via the big data.
Awesome. I mean, these are really critical feedbacks. I mean, saving 5% using data is really interesting. I mean, that's how you develop more efficiencies, and that's how, I mean, you build profitability as well, right?
Absolutely. And I think that, you know, like I said before, we have a very unique opportunity to manage all of the new expectations from consumers at large. It is a very interesting time, and e-commerce needs to be incredibly dynamic. Brick and mortar needs to respond, and they need to play carefully together. And as a distributor, what we're working to do is continue to grow sales, but in line with consideration of some of the key preference drivers in the industry right now, which are, you know, the perception of price, quality, digital capability, and speed. All of those factors are key and core to the success of any brand, despite their size or stage of growth.
Yes.
And if you don't keep those factors in mind, you're not going to thrive in this environment. It's really complicated, and you know, you really have to be aware of the strategy in each chain and be ready to view you know, the success in these different areas.
Right. I mean, the kind of responses which you have given have been, have been phenomenal, and I'm sure our viewers would really appreciate them. And thank you so much once again for coming on this session. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much once again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate everyone to check out, appreciate everyone's time, and then also encourage you to check out the KeHE Distributor website for more information on all of our capabilities. Like I said, it's an exciting time. We're here to support growth stage brands and look forward to working with you as well.
Awesome.